Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The gym was bustling, echoing with the sounds of punching bags and shouts of encouragement. In one corner, a young man with a shy face and slightly hunched shoulders was practicing hitting the bag, still clumsy. His name was Ethan Carter, and it was his first day. A few meters away, a small group of thugs were loudly mocking the beginners. Jason, the Tornado Miller, the tallest of them, approached Ethan, a mocking smile stretching his lips. "Well, new kid, looks like you need a bit of a real fight." Jason sneered, giving him a light tap on the shoulder, just enough to throw him off balance. The others burst out laughing. Ethan lowered his head, clenching his fists, feeling anger and shame rising within him. But no one knew that behind his calm eyes lay years of intensive training. Before becoming a waiter last week, Ethan was a kickboxing champion, known in his city as Fury. Jason saw only the trembling young novice before him. He advanced further, ready to humiliate Ethan in front of everyone. But just as his foot was about to strike to demonstrate his superiority, Ethan pivoted with surprising fluidity. In the blink of an eye, he dodged and counterattacked with a perfect combination, sending Jason crashing to the ground, stunned. Silence fell over the room. All laughter died away. Jason's eyes widened in astonishment. He had just learned, in the most humiliating way, that beneath the beginner's appearance hid a true champion. Ethan sat up, wiping the sweat from his brow, and said calmly, "My name is Ethan. And today, you're learning about manners." And from that moment on, Jason knew that underestimating someone could be very costly. The next morning, Ethan woke up with a strange serenity. The scene from the previous day was still playing in his head, but instead of feeling pride, he already felt ready to face what was next. He headed towards the gym, his heart light, ignoring the curious stares of the other beginners. The atmosphere had changed since the confrontation with Jason. Murmurs and whispers were already telling the story of his victory. Jason, humiliated, hadn't slept a wink all night. His pride had been trampled, and his ego burned with a mixture of anger and envy. As soon as he saw Ethan enter, he clenched his fists. "You really think it's over?" he snarled, his friends behind him displaying nervous smiles. Ethan calmly replied, "I'm not looking for trouble. But I'm not backing down either." At that moment, the gym's coach, Mr. Donovan, an imposing man with a graying beard and piercing eyes, intervened. "Jason, leave him alone. Here, we respect all members. If you can't do that, you'll be out." Jason sneered, but Ethan knew he had a choice to make, either ignore the provocations or show his true power. He chose patience. Later that day, during kickboxing class, Ethan stood in a corner, observing the movements, perfecting his technique. But Jason, unable to let the humiliation go unaddressed, began to constantly provoke him, throwing punches and hurling insults. Finally, Ethan stood up, his body ready and his muscles tense. His eyes met Jason's, and silence fell. The other students felt the tension rising. No one dared to intervene, knowing that a new round of humiliation or revenge was about to begin. And what seemed like a simple first day for Ethan was actually the beginning of a confrontation that would change the dynamics of the entire gym. The tension in the gym was palpable. All the students had gathered around the makeshift ring, their eyes fixed on Ethan and Jason. The air seemed to vibrate with every breath. Jason, his face red with anger and humiliation, stepped forward, ready to prove his superiority. He launched a swift, violent attack, but Ethan, with the fluidity of a seasoned fighter, dodged effortlessly. Every movement of Ethan's was precise, calculated, and almost hypnotic to watch. "You're fast." Jason groaned, surprised, his eyes betraying the fear he refused to admit. Ethan remained calm, analyzing every gesture, every tick of his opponent. He knew that Jason relied on brute force and intimidation, but he didn't know that technique and experience could make the difference. A moment later, Ethan launched a rapid combination, a roundhouse kick followed by a straight punch to the face. Jason stumbled backward, unable to comprehend how a beginner could react so quickly. Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. Frustrated, Jason attempted a desperate attack, but Ethan used his perfect guard to block and counterattack, sending Jason sprawling to the ground once more. The room erupted in exclamations. Some were stunned, others thrilled by this unexpected spectacle. Coach Donovan intervened, raising his hand. "Enough," he said firmly. "Ethan, you've shown you're talented. Jason, you need to learn some respect before you come back to the ring." Jason, humiliated but furious, stood up, his eyes blazing with resentment. He knew he had never faced anyone like Ethan. This defeat would not be forgotten. Ethan, for his part, calmly caught his breath. He had shown his strength without needing anger or excessive violence. But he also knew that this was only the beginning. Jason wouldn't accept it easily and would seek revenge. As the room emptied, Ethan felt a thrill of anticipation. This first confrontation had just created a rivalry that went far beyond a simple kickboxing ring. The next day, Jason had only one thing on his mind: revenge. His ego was bruised, and every moment since his defeat with Ethan had been eating him up inside. His friends, worried but fascinated, listened to him formulate a plan. "He thinks he can beat me because he's fast, but I'm going to show him what real strength is," Jason whispered, clenching his fists until his knuckles turned white. Meanwhile, Ethan continued his training with discipline. He knew Jason's provocation wouldn't stop there. Every movement, every strike, every dodge he practiced aimed to perfect his technique, but also to prepare for any surprise. That evening, Jason entered the room, alone this time, his eyes shining with a dangerous determination. He watched Ethan train, his gaze hard and calculating. "You were lucky yesterday," he said contemptuously. "Today will be different." Ethan didn't respond immediately. He stared calmly at Jason, his expression neutral but firm. He knew the attack would come soon, and he had to stay focused. A few seconds later, Jason charged forward, unleashing a series of swift and powerful blows. But Ethan, anticipating every move, dodged with ease. He responded with precise and strategic strikes, using technique rather than brute force. This time, the confrontation didn't end as quickly as the day before. Frustrated, Jason began to lose his focus. Ethan, observing closely, noticed a weakness in his guard and took advantage of it to deliver a perfectly aimed blow, sending Jason to the ground once again. "You should learn some respect before you challenge someone," Ethan said calmly, reaching out to help Jason get up. Jason, red with anger and humiliation, rejected Ethan's hand and walked away, vowing revenge one day. But Ethan knew he had just shown Jason that being strong wasn't enough to be a true fighter. As the room returned to calm, Ethan realized that this rivalry was only just beginning. He already sensed that the next confrontation would be even more intense and personal. A few days after Jason's defeat, Ethan thought he could continue his training in peace. But he was wrong. Jason had no intention of letting go of his grudge. That morning, upon arriving at the gym, Ethan noticed suspicious glances and whispers. Someone had left graffiti on his locker: "You'll never beat me." The crudely drawn letters were accompanied by a mocking drawing. Ethan took a deep breath and shook his head. He knew that reacting angrily would only play into Jason's hands. He gathered his things and stepped onto the tatami, determined to stay focused. But the tension rose when Jason appeared at the entrance to the room, followed by two of his friends. They had prepared a scene to humiliate Ethan in front of all the other members, to provoke him, to challenge him, and to put him in a situation where he would have to respond without excessive violence. "So, ready for your next lesson in defeat?" Jason said with a cruel smile. Ethan looked at him calmly and simply replied, "I'm here to train, not to play your games." Jason chuckled and stepped forward, but this time he used a more subtle strategy. He tried to provoke Ethan verbally, attacking his choices, his habits, and even his past, seeking to distract him. Ethan, however, remained impassive. He had learned that true combat wasn't won solely with fists, but also with self-control. Every provocation was an opportunity to observe Jason, understand his weaknesses, and prepare his next reaction. Finally, after several tense minutes, Mr. Donovan intervened once again. Jason, you're crossing the line. This room isn't a place for personal revenge. You'll stay to apologize or you'll leave. Jason grumbled, aware that there wasn't much he could do right now. But in his eyes, the promise of a future confrontation still burned brightly. Ethan, for his part, knew that the real battle wouldn't be confined to the ring. He sensed that Jason was ready to do anything to regain the upper hand, and he had to be prepared for every trick and provocation that would come, both on the mat and outside the gym. After Jason's repeated provocations, Ethan realized he could no longer face this rivalry alone. He had to be vigilant, strategic, and possibly surround himself with support. One evening, after training, he ran into Liam Parker, an experienced member of the gym, known for his impeccable technique and wisdom in martial arts. Liam had observed the previous fights and approached Ethan with an encouraging smile. "I've seen you handling Jason these past few days," Liam said. "You've got talent, but you need to learn to anticipate his provocations and traps. Otherwise, he'll end up catching you off guard." Ethan nodded. He knew Jason was cunning and wouldn't be satisfied with a simple physical fight. He also had to master his opponent's psychology. "Do you want to help me?" asked Ethan. "Of course," Liam replied. "But it won't just be about punches. We're going to work on strategy, mental defense, and speed. Jason will never know what hit him." In the following days, Ethan trained with Liam, discovering new techniques, refining his reflexes, and boosting his confidence. Each session strengthened not only his body but also his mind. Meanwhile, Jason was preparing his plan. This time, he didn't just want to win in the ring. He intended to publicly humiliate Ethan, isolate him, and ruin his reputation in the arena. To achieve this, he began spreading rumors, talking behind Ethan's back, and trying to turn the other members of the arena against him. But Ethan was no longer the same vulnerable beginner. With Liam's help and his growing mastery of kickboxing, he felt ready to face not only Jason's strength, but also his cunning and manipulations. And so, the rivalry between Ethan and Jason went beyond the realm of simple combat. It became a duel of mind, technique, and strategy, where every move and every decision could change the outcome. A few days later, Jason decided that verbal provocation was no longer enough. This time, he wanted a public confrontation that would humiliate Ethan in front of everyone in the room. He devised a risky plan, to provoke Ethan into an open challenge, where the crowd would judge who was truly the best. On the morning of the challenge, the room was filled with curious and eager members. Whispers were rife, everyone had heard about Ethan's astonishing skill and Jason's grudge. The atmosphere was electric. Jason stepped onto the tatami, a mocking smile on his lips, and said, "Ethan, I challenge you. This time, no more games. Just you and me, in front of everyone." Ethan took a deep breath, aware that this was exactly what Jason wanted, to put him under pressure and test his concentration. But he calmly accepted it. "Okay, Jason. But remember, it's not just about strength." The fight began. Jason attacked furiously, mixing powerful blows with unpredictable movements, hoping to surprise Ethan. But Ethan, thanks to his training with Liam, anticipated every move. His technique was fluid, almost perfect, and each blow struck the right balance between power and precision. The crowd was stunned. Ethan's strikes were clean and swift, each dodge calculated. Jason, despite his power, began to lose his composure. He tried to unsettle Ethan, but every attempt failed. At a critical moment, Jason attempted a daring move, hoping to end the duel quickly. Ethan, however, used a combination of counterattack and strategic movement, sending Jason to the ground once again. Silence fell over the room. Then, the members erupted in applause. Ethan calmly straightened up, wiping the sweat from his brow, while Jason, humiliated and breathless, understood that this time, he had been surpassed not only physically, but also mentally. Coach Donovan intervened. "Ethan, you have shown control, respect, and strength. Jason, you have learned an important lesson." Jason, furious but aware of his defeat, left the room without a word, vowing that it wasn't over. Ethan, for his part, felt a mixture of satisfaction and caution. He knew the rivalry wasn't over. Jason could return with even more devious plans, but for now, he had earned everyone's respect and solidified his own confidence. A few days after his public defeat, Jason was no longer ashamed of his methods. He planned a trap outside the gym. His objective was clear: to lure Ethan into a vulnerable situation and force him to give up or suffer the ultimate humiliation. One afternoon, Ethan received an anonymous message on his phone. "Jason is waiting for you behind the old abandoned gym. If you're a real fighter, come alone." Ethan immediately sensed it was a trap, but his curiosity and sense of honor compelled him to prepare. He didn't leave unprepared. He informed Liam and Coach Donovan, and took precautions. Upon arriving, he spotted Jason, who was waiting for him with a cold smile, accompanied by 2 accomplices. The place was dark and isolated, perfect for an unequal confrontation. "So, the hero of the room, ready to be humiliated?" Jason sneered. Ethan remained calm, analyzing everyone's movements and positions. He knew he had to be cunning and quick, because this fight wouldn't be fair. Jason attacked immediately, using his 2 accomplices to try and corner Ethan. But Ethan, thanks to his training and his ability to anticipate movements, quickly dodged and neutralized the attacks. Every move was precise, every blow calculated. He skillfully and calmly defused the situation, using his opponent's strength against themselves. Jason, furious to see his plan fail, attempted one last attack, but Ethan overpowered him with a flawless combination. As Jason's accomplices fled, Ethan calmly turned to him. "It's not just about strength, Jason. You have to learn respect, even outside the ring." Humiliated and powerless, Jason left, but this confrontation left a clear message: Ethan was not only a champion in the ring, he was also cunning and capable of defending himself against any manipulation. This victory further enhanced Ethan's reputation, but he knew Jason wouldn't give up so easily. The fight wasn't just physical. The next stage would be mental, strategic, and perhaps even more unpredictable. A few weeks had passed since the trap set in the abandoned gymnasium. Jason, humiliated repeatedly, could no longer bear the shame. He decided to strike where Ethan least expected it, in his everyday life. Jason began spying on Ethan, noting his routines, his schedule, and his acquaintances. He had realized that physical confrontations were not enough. He needed to attack psychologically to destabilize him. One day, as Ethan was leaving the gym after an intense workout, he noticed an unfamiliar car following him. His instincts, honed by all his past experiences with Jason, immediately put him on alert. He took a different route, but the car persisted. Ethan contacted Liam and Donovan, explaining the situation. Together, they devised a plan to trap Jason if he tried anything. Ethan knew he had to stay calm and not be caught off guard. Later that afternoon, Jason tried to approach Ethan, this time intending to create an embarrassing confrontation in front of passers-by. He thought he was being clever and confident of his revenge. But Ethan, anticipating his every move, turned the situation to his advantage. When they came face to face in a narrow alley, Jason attempted a quick, brutal attack. But Ethan, using his speed and technique, disarmed him and brought him down, this time in front of Liam and Coach Donovan, who had arrived to protect him. "Jason, that's enough," Donovan shouted. "Revenge will get you nowhere. If you continue, there will be consequences." Humiliated, furious and powerless once again, Jason realized that Ethan was not just a physical opponent. He was intelligent, strategic, and capable of anticipating every trap. Ethan, for his part, felt a mixture of satisfaction and vigilance. He knew that Jason wouldn't give up easily and that the next confrontation could be even more unpredictable and dangerous. The game of cunning and strategy had just reached a new level. The rivalry was no longer just in the ring, but in every decision, every move, and every challenge that daily life could bring. In the following weeks, the atmosphere in the gym changed. Everyone knew that the rivalry between Ethan and Jason was reaching its peak. Jason, obsessed with the idea of revenge, announced a final challenge, an official fight, without interruptions or accomplices, in front of all the students and Coach Donovan. On the day of the duel, the hall was packed. curious and excited eyes were fixed on the improvised ring. The energy was palpable, every breath seemed to resonate like a drumbeat. Jason entered, his face hard and his fists clenched, ready to give it his all. Ethan, calm and focused, stood opposite him. Silence fell as Donovan announced, "Let the duel begin." The fight began with unprecedented intensity. Jason attacked with all his might, mixing quick blows, dodges, and tricks to surprise Ethan. But Ethan, thanks to his experience, technique, and composure, anticipated every move. Every blow exchanged was precise and strategic. The spectators held their breath, impressed by Ethan's agility and control. Jason, despite his power, was beginning to tire and lose confidence. At a critical moment, Jason attempted a desperate attack to end the fight. But Ethan, using a perfect combination of speed and technique, disarmed him and brought him to the ground, motionless. The arena erupted in cheers. Ethan reached out to help Jason to his feet. "Learn that strength alone is not enough," he said calmly. "Discipline, patience, and respect are just as important." Jason, humiliated but exhausted, finally accepted Ethan's help. For the first time, he felt not only defeat, but also respect for his opponent. This final confrontation cemented Ethan's reputation as a true champion, not only in the ring, but also as a strategist and master of his own destiny. As for Jason, he realized he had much to learn, and that revenge only leads to humiliation. After the decisive duel, the gym returned to calm. The murmurs and whispers gave way to respect and admiration for Ethan. The members recognized not only his physical strength, but also his discipline and self-control. Jason, meanwhile, sat in a corner, lost in thought. For the first time, he was reflecting on his choices and how he would confront his adversaries. The hatred and resentment had vanished, replaced by a kind of respect tinged with frustration. Ethan, for his part, showed no arrogance. He continued to train rigorously, but he also took the time to encourage the other members and share his experience. He understood that the true spirit of a champion lies not only in victory, but in the ability to inspire and uplift others. One day, Jason timidly approached Ethan. "Listen. I know I was ridiculous. Thank you for teaching me a lesson." Ethan nodded and replied calmly, "You can always change, Jason. True strength comes from those who learn from their mistakes." From that day on, Jason began to transform his attitude. He trained seriously, respecting his teammates and striving to become a better fighter and a better person. The gym, once the scene of their fierce rivalry, became the place of a budding friendship and mutual respect. Ethan, for his part, continued to perfect his art, but he knew that what he had gained went far beyond fighting. He had acquired self-control, the respect of others, and proof that true power is not measured only by fists, but by the strength of the heart and mind. The rivalry was over, but the lesson remained etched in the minds of all who had witnessed it. Underestimating someone can be costly, and true victory lies in the balance between strength, wisdom, and respect.